Every time you search something on Google, you get 10 blue links. You click one, skim it. Nope, not what you wanted. Go back, click another, open 3 tabs, and 5 minutes later you finally piece together some kind of answer. Perplexity does that entire thing in 3 seconds. One question, one clear answer, sources right there in line. No tabs, no skimming, just done. But here's what blows my mind. What happens in those 3 seconds is one of the most sophisticated AI pipelines anyone's ever built. And nobody really explains how it works. So today, we're going to tear it apart. We're tracing one single question. From the moment you hit enter to the moment an answer shows up on your screen, every stage, every trick, every engineering decision behind it. And by the end, I think you'll agree, this isn't just a better search engine, it's something fundamentally different. Let's go. Okay, so what is Perplexity, really? Here's the simplest way I can put it. Google is a search engine. Perplexity is an answer engine. One word difference. But honestly, it changes everything. Google matches your query against a massive index and hands you a list of links, basically saying, here, go read. The reading? The comparing? Figuring out what's actually true. That's all on you. Perplexity says, I'll handle it. It does the reading, it does the comparing, it writes you a real coherent answer, and it shows you exactly where every single fact came from, so you can check its work. And the way it pulls this off is kind of wild. It combines 2 technologies that honestly were never meant to work together, real-time web search and large language models. There's a name for this combo, retrieval-augmented generation, or just RAG. Hold on to that term because it's the big idea behind everything we're about to break down. Now, the whole pipeline has 6 stages, and the very first one is the one most people completely overlook. But honestly, it might be the most important because it decides whether the rest of the pipeline even works correctly. Say you type in, "Why is the sky blue?" Sure, easy. Any search engine can handle that, right? But what if you type something like, "That paper from Hinton about capsule networks, the 2017 one, what were the key findings?" Okay now, that's messy. It's conversational. There's no clean keyword in there. A traditional search engine would honestly struggle with this. So, here's what Perplexity does. And this is clever. Before it searches for anything, it runs your question through a language model first. And 3 things happen. First, intent classification. The system figures out, is this a factual question? A comparison? Something creative? Because that answer type completely shapes how the rest of the pipeline behaves. Second, and this is the big one, query rewriting. That messy Hinton question, Perplexity quietly rewrites it into something like, Jeffrey Hinton, Capsule Network's 2017 paper key findings. Clean, specific, actually searchable. And that rewritten version is what gets sent to the search layer. You never even see this happening. But it's the reason Perplexity finds great results, even when your question is kind of a mess. And third, context resolution. This one's really cool. If you're in the middle of a conversation and you ask, what's a transformer? Then follow up with who invented it. Perplexity knows it means the transformer architecture, not your phone, not the internet, the transformer. It actually tracks the thread. Google treats every single search like you just walked in the door for the first time. Perplexity remembers what you were talking about. Okay, so now we've got a clean, well-structured query. And what happens next? This is where it starts getting really interesting. That rewritten query gets fanned out to multiple sources, all at the same time. We're talking web search APIs, Perplexity's own index, their own crawler, called PerplexityBot, that's constantly scraping the web for fresh content. Got a scientist's question? It hits PubMed, ArcGIF. Breaking news? Real-time feeds. So far, that sounds a lot like a regular search engine, just bigger. But then, Perplexity does something a search engine fundamentally can't. Perplexity doesn't just find pages, it actually reads them. It downloads the raw HTML, pulls out the main content, and strips away everything else. Ads? Gone. Nav menus? Gone. Sidebars, cookie banners? All gone. What's left is just the real information. Think about that for a second. Google says, here are some pages that might help you. Perplexity says, I already read them all. Let me tell you what they say. That's a huge difference. Now at this point, the system might have content from 20, 30, even 50 different web pages. That is a lot of text. Way too much to just throw at a language model all at once. So the next step is figuring out what actually matters. And honestly, This is where some of the most impressive engineering lives. So all that raw text, it gets chopped up into smaller pieces called chunks. Each one's roughly a paragraph, maybe a few hundred tokens, bite-sized units of information. And you need to do this because language models have a limited context window. You can't just shove 50 full articles in there and go, hey, figure it out. You have to be smart about what goes in. So Perplexity runs this really elegant two-layer ranking process. Layer 1, vector search. Every chunk gets converted into what's called an embedding, basically a list of numbers that captures what it means. Your query gets the same treatment. And then the system just measures how close each chunk's meaning is to your question. Close? Probably relevant. Far away? Probably not. Now this is fast, but it's not perfect, which is exactly why there's a second layer. Layer 2, re-ranking. A specialized neural network called a cross-encoder takes each chunk, pairs it directly with your query, and scores how well they actually match. This is slower, but way, way more accurate. It catches the subtle stuff that vector search just can't pick up. After both layers, the system picks the top 5 to 20 best chunks. And here's the part I love. Each chunk stays tagged with its source URL. Every single piece of information carries a receipt. You can trace it back. It's basically like having a research assistant read 50 articles for you. Highlight the most important paragraphs, staple a little source label to each one, and stack them neatly on your desk. Now, it's time to actually write the answer, and this next part is the heart of everything. So everything we've gathered so far gets handed over to the large language model, and the model takes it from there. But wait, here's a fair question. Why not just ask the large language model directly? Like, skip the search, skip the ranking, just go ask ChatGPT and call it a day. Here's why that doesn't work. A standalone LLM answers from memory, from its training data, and that data has a cutoff date. So you ask something like, what's the population of Dubai? And you might get a number that's 2 years old. Or even worse, the model just makes something up, completely wrong number, said with absolute confidence. That's hallucination. And it's a real problem. This is exactly what RAG, retrieval-augmented generation, solves. Instead of relying on memory, RAG says, okay, here's the question, and here are actual, real, current sources I just pulled from the web. Use these to write your answer, and cite them. So the prompt that goes to the model looks something like, based on the following sources, answer the user's question. Cite each claim using bracket notation. And then it includes all the ranked chunks, each one labeled with a source number and URL. And at the end, the user's actual question. The model reads through all of it and writes a response that's grounded in real documents. Not its memory, not its best guess, actual evidence from the web. And here's the design choice that really matters. Every factual claim in the answer gets a numbered citation. You click on it, and you go straight to the original source. This isn't just for show, it's a verifiability layer. It's the difference between trust me and here, check for yourself. Now, depending on how hard your question is, Perplexity picks different models, their own fine-tuned models for everyday queries, something like GPT or Claude for the really tough ones. And the response streams in token by token, so you're reading the answer as it's being written. You don't sit there waiting, it just flows onto the screen. That's RAG in action: search, retrieve, ground, generate, cite, all in about 3 seconds. But here's where it gets even more interesting. What about questions that are just too complex for a single search? Yeah, a simple factual question? One round of search and answer is totally fine. But what about complex questions? Something like, compare how OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google approach AI safety, and where they actually disagree. That's not a one-search question. That needs multiple rounds of research, multiple angles. And this is where ProSearch kicks in, because this is where Perplexity stops being a tool and starts becoming an agent. Instead of one search cycle, ProSearch runs a multi-step reasoning loop. It searches, reads the results, figures out what's still missing, writes brand new follow-up queries, searches again, and it just keeps going until it has enough to give you a genuinely comprehensive answer. The model is literally planning its own research strategy. Think about that. Okay, I've got OpenAI's safety framework, but I'm still missing Anthropic's. Let me search for that. This source says one thing, but that source disagrees. Let me find a third one to settle it. If you've seen our AI Agents series, you'll recognize this immediately. This is the agentic loop. Plan, act, observe, adjust. the exact same pattern, just applied to search. And the result? You get answers that feel like a research analyst spent hours on your question. Except it took 15 seconds. Okay, let's zoom all the way out. Google's pipeline is basically this. Index lookup, ranked links come out, then you do the reading. Perplexity's pipeline is everything we just walked through. Rewrite, search, read, chunk, rank, answer, cite. All of that before you blink. Google gives you the haystack, Perplexity tries to find the needle. Now look, it's not perfect. Perplexity is only as good as the sources it finds. If the top results are wrong or biased, the answer inherits that. And you are trusting the model's judgment about what matters. But that's exactly why the citations exist. Every claim links back to where it came from. You can always check. Trust, but verify. So here's the real shift. For decades, search meant one thing. Type a few words, get a list of links, and do the work yourself. Perplexity changes that experience. It doesn't just point you to information. It reads across sources, ranks evidence, cites its work, and synthesizes an answer. It's not magic. It's engineered. And honestly, that makes it even cooler. That's it for today. Like and subscribe so you don't miss more AI deep dives. See you in the next one.